Are you ready to break free from hesitation, self-doubt, and isolation? Do you want to lead with confidence, build powerful connections, and live boldly? I'm Corey Baum, and I'm here to share the most impactful strategies and mindsets that I've learned through coaching, leadership, and real-world experience. Together, we'll forge unshakable confidence, master social dynamics, and create a life rooted in purpose, brotherhood, and bold action. Inside, you'll get the tools and insights to become the strongest, most connected version of yourself. Let's dive in. Hey, welcome back to the Evolved Men podcast. Today I'm joined by someone whose work speaks directly to the heart of what we do here at the Evolved Men podcast. Kimberly Brown is a meditation teacher, author, and guide who helps people cultivate self-compassion, emotional clarity, and deeper relationships. Not through perfection or pressure, but through gentleness, presence, and genuine human connection. She teaches traditional Buddhist practices in a way that's grounded, accessible, and deeply relevant for the modern world. And her books on self-compassion and emotional regulation, grief, and relationships have helped thousands of people reconnect to themselves in a kinder, more honest way. You know, what really struck me about Kimberly is her understanding of men, especially the silent pressure that so many of us feel to hold everything together, to stay strong, to never show weakness, to constantly push ourselves to be better. She sees how that grind leads to burnout, isolation, numbing behaviors, and a brutal inner critic that never seems satisfied. So today we're going to talk about a different path, a path of strength through self-acceptance, power through vulnerability, and clarity through compassion. Kimberly has helped countless people, especially men, break out of the patterns of shame and self-judgment. And today she's here to share that work with all of us. Hey, welcome, Kimberly. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Corey. I'm really glad to be here.
So I'm curious, Kimberly, for the men that are listening who might be new to your work, how do you describe what you do?
Well, what I do is I use tools of meditation to help people cultivate self-kindness, to help people cultivate insight, and to help all of us develop the qualities we already have that are usually hidden from us, or often are hidden from us. Those qualities are compassion and wisdom and joy. And so the way I help people do this, I have that in quotes, is because it's not through words. It's really through self-understanding and using certain simple meditations that help us rewire all of our conditioning and our old patterns that maybe aren't serving us very well right now.
What is it that drew you into this kind of work?
Well, I trained to be a psychotherapist. This was a long time ago, maybe 20 years ago, close to it. And in that training, which I did, it was like a 5 or 6 year program, many hours to be licensed. And in the 4th year of it, I quit because I just didn't feel that there was something wrong with people. If you become a psychotherapist, you will have to diagnose people. Now, I am not at all criticizing psychotherapy because it has really helped me, and I've had some amazing therapists. And for me, I didn't feel there was something, wrong with me or you or anyone else. I just felt like, well, we all have these struggles. And so that wasn't the way for me. And within a few years, I wasn't sure where I was going to go with my life. I was working in human resources, and I started to have panic attacks.
Oh, no.
And Corey, I could tell you exactly why I had them. I had plenty of therapy myself, and I had a really chaotic childhood, and there were real reasons why I was having panic attacks. And I didn't have any tools, none. So that led me into meditation. And I live in New York City, where very luckily there are many mindfulness centers and lots of Buddhist teachers, and they have a lot of knowledge of how one can approach your mind and your emotions with tools. So that's what led me into these practices. And it really helped me with panic attacks. They didn't disappear, but my relationship to them really changed. Rather than like white knuckling through it and just wishing it would go away, it was like more of a, oh, this is so painful. Oh, can I get closer to this painful experience? It's not going to last forever, but I'm here for me. And that opening was really, it was a sort of transformative moment that not only could I understand myself as I had learned with traditional modern psychotherapeutic and psychological tools, I could also now care for myself and my mind and my heart with real wisdom and strength. I was practicing with Tibetan teachers at first, who were amazing. And then my mom died. And my mind was very unsteady. I couldn't really do a lot of those practices. So I went on a retreat, a week-long retreat in Massachusetts at a place called the Insight Meditation Society with a person named Sharon Salzberg, who became my main teacher and continues to be. And her main practice is loving kindness meditation. It's a practice of using certain phrases of wisdom and kindness and offering them in a sort of mantra-like way to oneself and others. And this practice for me really steadied my mind. And it really allowed me to soften enough so that I could really be present for myself. Within a year or two of that, I did some training to be a meditation teacher, and I started teaching the same practices that I use, the same tools. And it's been so gratifying and also amazing to see other people, use these very simple tools to start to reconnect with themselves.
Yeah, that's so profound that some of those sort of things that it's. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. Just
Okay.
making sure.
Yeah.
You had a look on your face that was like.
I did. Yes.
All
Sorry.
right. Anyways, but those sort of things, a lot of what I'm hearing from you is that it's not necessarily like a magic pill, that it's a journey, that these things don't necessarily just go away, that it's really the beginnings of a relationship, right? And maybe it's rebuilding a relationship, or maybe it's starting the relationship for the first time for some people.
Yes.
And
Well said, Corey. Yes.
thank you. Yeah. That's interesting. I'm fascinated to get into it. So I have so many questions, but we'll kind of keep going through it. So part of your story mentions that you're a relatable guide, right, to emotional healing and modern life through like Buddhist practices, right? So was there a moment for you, like personally, when these sort of things like, and it sounds like it's been quite a journey for you, but something that transformed in your own life?
Yeah. I mean, I used to, for many years, till I was in my late 30s, and I started to come to these practices. The way I related to myself, Corey, every day was something like, Kim, you're not working hard enough. Kim, why you've done so much work? How come you still feel upset today? Lots of comparison. Oh, you're such a loser compared to so and so. These were the voices that went through my head in a very predictable way and also in a very familiar way. I mean, Corey, I didn't really even think, oh, that should change. I just thought, well, that's the way it is. Those are my thoughts. And that's how I operate in the world, you know? And it wasn't until I came to these practices that I realized I could relate very differently to myself. So, for example, this happened recently. I burned something in the oven. Smoke was pouring out of it. I was very frustrated with myself, and I said in my head, I said to myself, "God, that was stupid." And Corey, 1 second later, I said, "But it's okay. I'm doing my best." So that was the shift. It's not so dramatic, like, "Oh my God, I turned into love and light." It was
Yeah.
more like, "Oh, something softened for me." And when it did that, related to those thoughts was shame, was embarrassment, was a sense of inadequacy. And that interrupted my relationships with other people, not with friendships, with family, and with dating, you know? And when that lifted, I I still am more able to be a little bit more vulnerable with other people and a little bit more open to their vulnerabilities. There's just a little less should. I should be this way. Corey, you should
Mm.
be that way. That all kind of lifted. And so I have to say my relationships have really benefited, from this change in me.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think the percentage was? If you were to look back at the percentage of positive to, and I don't know if like positive is necessarily the right word, but helpful, right, versus unhelpful sort of thoughts. Because to your point, people walk around, including myself, every day thinking that this is helpful criticism, right? I mean, how do you
Yeah.
get to a place? You don't show up at the gym by, loving your way into it, right? They think that the only way to do it is to, brute
Yeah.
force,
Yeah.
to hate
Yeah.
yourself into these sort of things. So what would you, if you had to just guess, what do you think the percentage of helpful to unhelpful thoughts were at that back in the day?
Well, here's what I would say, Corey. It's not that those thoughts disappeared or never come up for me. And I don't want to even offer that to your listeners, like, oh, there's a way to make these thoughts disappear. But there is a way that they're not so real. You don't believe them anymore. So for me, what happened was two things. They are less, and when they come up, they have less charge,
Mm.
if that makes sense. And from a Buddhist view, it's not changing thought. It's relating to the thought differently because thoughts aren't really up to us. If they were, we all would be thinking differently, right? But all the things we've learned in life, all of our experiences, um, when certain causes and conditions come up, well, then thoughts come up. I mean, I jokingly say sometimes I walk down the street and a Journey song comes in my head. Corey, I couldn't tell you why that happens. I don't know. But there are causes and conditions beyond me. I didn't choose that. So I just want to kind of be clear to listeners that you don't have to get in there and fight with those thoughts and get rid of them.
And
It's
that's
more of,
I'm sorry, go
like
ahead. Yeah.
yeah. No, go ahead, Corey.
That's a really good point, and I appreciate you pointing that out because I feel like at times, especially with men, that there can be this almost fight or this battle, right? To
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the same wording comes up often for me, but it's to like slay the dragon or to fight the demon,
Yeah.
right? To
Yeah.
beat that part of ourself into submission, and it sounds like that it's less of those parts of us aren't ever going away, right? And those parts of us might be, different experiences in our life, right? Things
Yeah.
that at times probably helped us in a certain sort of way, but it's, yeah, I appreciate you bringing that back around, that it's not beating it into submission.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And yes, that whole idea of like, I'm going to slay the dragon, but you're the dragon, right? You're
Yeah.
all of that. And in Zen, they have a saying, stop the war with yourself. Stop the war with yourself. And that's it. Oh my God, why am I thinking that again? Oh, what's wrong with me? Why am I upset again? Um, you know, the the orientation is, oh, wow, I feel angry and that's so painful. How can I be with it? Right? Wow, I made a mistake. That makes me feel bad about myself. And it's okay. We all make mistakes. And that's just it's subtle, but it's so different.
So I'm curious what your thoughts are around. I mean, this all makes a lot of sense to me, but I think from a male or sort of masculinity perspective, that this also, there's an aspect of this that can be interpreted as very soft,
Yeah.
right? When do you think you first realized for that men specifically were struggling with it with self compassion in this sort of way, that there was, yeah.
Yeah. What I've noticed in working with men, and I'm not trying to generalize, everyone is different, but what I've noticed is, all of us are struggling with self compassion. That's difficult in our culture. And the obstacles that men face are a little bit different than women, in my experience. And some of that is because men have really been inhibited by our culture. And it's really frowned upon to even express feelings to oneself, right? Often men, about the only thing they're taught is they could be happy or angry, you know, and anything else, well, nobody's going to like that. Don't cry, you know, don't be like a little girl. I mean, you still hear this today. And so, as a result, many men have no idea how to connect with their feelings. And sometimes one of the biggest differences is when I talk with women, usually, not always, but usually they're able to say, oh, I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling frustrated. And often men struggle even to name it. It takes them a lot more time to recognize and get in touch with themselves. Again, I'm not saying all men. I'm saying we don't teach these tools very well. And so it's all very new. It's I think you said earlier about it being like a brand new relationship, to yourself. And also everyone in our culture is taught to do, but men have a special role to be providers, to be quote unquote successful, to do something. And so, the sense is of this outward direction in the world, controlling, changing, being successful, getting things. Um, and it's hard to sort of soften a little bit and turn towards oneself and say, oh, what's here? What's in this direction? And how is that driving, how I might be acting in the world?
It kind of makes me think of, you know, uh, along those lines of this do, or this drive, and only having, it seems like kind of an on and off switch, right? You're either happy or angry, right? That there's so much more. It's almost like black and white thinking, right? Or color blindness, that there's so much more vibrancy to the world. There's so many ways to describe what it is that we're experiencing. And maybe that's part of what it is, of what I'm thinking, is that there's there can be such a filter on even how it is as men we're perceiving the world, right? Because we only see it as either one thing or the other, and aren't even allowing ourselves to experience it in such a way. And it's, yeah, I mean, going back to the starting that relationship for the first time with ourselves. I think that, as you mentioned, that men are brought up to, one of the ones I quote often is like, I'll give you something to cry about, right? It was a common,
Yes. Oh
it
my
was like,
God,
oh, I
that's
definitely don't want to
so
cry.
sad. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And so we're taught, right, whether, purposefully or not, that these things are bad. Right. And I think that when it's, when we're not allowed to explore these other sort of emotions, that, if we're told that if doing any sort of exploration in that sense is bad, then we don't get the opportunity to look at what frustration looks like, at what boredom looks like, of what sadness or anger or grief or any of these other sort of things. And the reality is that we're all experiencing it. And roundabout way, what I was trying to get to here was that I think that they're showing up, and they're showing up in ways that we don't necessarily maybe even acknowledge. They're showing up in our friendships, our relationships. They're showing up in our health concerns, right? And our habits and things that we're doing. They're there, but we're still just ignoring them.
Yeah, yeah. I think so too, Corey. And I think you see that in the ways in which people cope. There are healthy coping mechanisms and then there are unhealthy ones. So it's not a judgment, right or wrong, good or bad. And we're living in a time of unhealthy coping mechanisms are very common. Working constantly is an unhealthy coping mechanism. Many people are doing that because the moment they stop, certain feelings come up that are really hard, that are really confusing. And who wants to feel that? So I'm going to work constantly. I'm going to drink or take cannabis. Again, those are not right or wrong bad things, only if you're using them as a way to cope with your own feelings. Online porn, again, not against it. And people are using this as a way to cope with difficult feelings. So how can we, and men in particular, allow themselves to experience everything that's in their heart, everything that's in their mind? Learn to shift the attention and then develop healthy coping skills. Going for a walk, sitting in meditation, talking to another person, sitting quietly and enjoying a meal, whatever it is. And to do that, again, not because it's like a better thing in a moral sense, but because it's a healthier way and because it's a friendlier way to yourself. It's like you said, now you get to know yourself now. Oh, wow, I'm pretty great, actually. So are you. We all are. We have these very rich lives. And being able to embrace that, it's very beautiful. Then you can also start to share it.
Yeah, there's so much there, like so much of a relationship to learn about ourselves, to explore about ourselves. That unfortunately, I think a lot of us don't ever get the opportunity. There's so many things that are coming in from the outside world at any given moment that we don't have the opportunity to sit and stop. And kind of with that, how do you feel that the outside world, I mean, as we're having this conversation, I just think of, every day it's almost this gauntlet of things piling on us, right? And in ways, they're great efficiencies that technology is advancing. We've got AI, we've got these different things, but these are all ways to work faster, to work more, to be more efficient. And I find for myself more often that it's like this drum that's beating. It's like boom, 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 more, faster. Come on, that being intentional about taking that time or turning off notifications, like it's almost anxiety inducing, to stop. And I think getting to your point that it's almost anxiety inducing to stop and to take this time to to explore that relationship or to just sit in silence for a minute. I mean, if I'm being honest, like it's so in thinking about that, how do you generally navigate entering into those arenas kind of for the first time?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, slowly and kindly. You know, the very first step is to notice that you're doing that. I mean, as you were talking about these efficiencies and these things, and once you get caught in that, me too, it really self generates. It's very powerful. It's like you're in you're on a hill rolling down it. So sometimes we're living there and not even noticing, So the first step is being able to notice, oh gosh, I'm really caught in this cycle of work, of doing, of not paying attention to myself. And so that's the first step, just even knowing that. That's kind of a mindful step. And then the second is saying, well, I'm just going to stop just for 2 minutes. No big whoop. I'm not going to, go on a retreat for a day. I'm just going to stop for 2 minutes. I'm going to close my device and stop talking to family and turn off all the screens and be with myself. Now, this is a really novel thing for most people today to not be with a screen. You mentioned boredom. Nobody wants to be bored, but boredom it's the least harmful feeling. If you really think about it, nothing's happening. Nobody's harming you. It's just a sense of like, oh, there should be more here, right? So starting to be able, just slowly, 2 minutes, sit quietly with yourself. Notice that you have a body. Feel your breath, you know, go for a quiet walk and you'll hear so much. There's so much out there, cars and planes and birds, people yelling, right? So starting to just slowly do this. I don't suggest that people, plunge into things, but to slowly start doing that and then developing a capacity to create, you'll always hear meditation teachers, we say create space. And what you're creating space for is all of you, your fears, your dreams, your wishes, your loves and your joys, all of it. And when you can make space for all of it, well, then then you're not one thing, right? I'm anxious, I'm scared, I'm angry. Well, that's not true. From a Buddhist view, what we would say is anger is arising right now. Anxiety or worry is arising right now. And it's not good and it's not bad and it's not all of me. I can create space around it. So here it is. I can be with it. I can be kind to it. And most importantly, this is the third step. I don't have to act out of it. Because that's usually where our emotions trip up. I'm anxious, so now I'm trying to control my wife. I'm anxious. I'm angry, so now I'm going to yell at someone. However it looks for you. This is saying you could have your anger. There's nothing wrong with it. Nobody's telling you not to have that. And be with it. Be kind to it. A very great Zen teacher named Thich Nhat Hanh said when he was angry, he would say, I see you, anger, and I'm not going to leave you. Now, Corey, when I read that, I couldn't believe it. Nobody ever taught me something like that. They were like, if you have anger, either take it on someone else or you're a bad person, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's really allows us, starting to soften and build our capacity. And what also arises there is kind of a natural curiosity about yourself. A natural, like, oh, I do that. I feel that. Oh, that's interesting. Um, anyway, you asked how we can start. We can start very slowly, just noticing you do that and giving yourself this opportunity of a minute, or 2, 3 minutes to develop, your wisdom and your kindness for yourself.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm glad that you said 2 or 3 minutes to start with. Like I know it may not seem like very long, but I know even for myself in the past, it can be so challenging I mean, 2 minutes when you're used to, lights and alerts and doing and moving, that 2 minutes can be a long time. And so there's no, it sounds like there's not really a way to fail at this, that it's
Beautifully
acknowledging
said.
it.
Yes. Yes. Anybody listening, Corey is exactly right. There is no way to fail at this. There's no way to do meditation wrong or even, be with yourself in a wrong way. It's just an experience, And I think it's possible to shift the view just very subtly from I want to be better and fix myself to I want to take care of myself wisely. And the outcome is the same, but the approach is very different when you look at it as a way of self care, taking care of yourself, of taking care of your loved ones and your family by developing your own capacity to be with yourself. And I mentioned that I've studied with Tibetan teachers, and well, just in Buddhism in general, meditation is a big tool for that. And most people have a daily practice. It could be 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. You sit, and it's very useful. I encourage anyone who's listening to find your way to meditation. And one of my Tibetan teachers said to us, I'd like you all to practice 5 minutes every hour during the day. So, like from 8 to 4 or 9 to 5, just stop for 5 minutes every hour. And I remember thinking, Corey, like, that's not going to do anything. That's not long enough. Oh
Yeah.
my God, it was so useful. It was after a week, I could see how useful it was. It really interrupted kind of my day of the snowball in my mind, that avalanche of busyness. It interrupted it every hour for this brief moment. And it was a very powerful tool. So I encourage your listeners, you can try that too.
So what do you think, especially in regards to men, and this is something that we talked about a little bit earlier, or maybe it was before we hit record, about especially in regards to stepping into this arena? I think that there can be a sense of vulnerability for men, right? To, not even if we're getting to the place of actually sharing with other people, but even just sharing to ourselves. When I think of, at times like of stopping, of not producing, of that can be a sense of weakness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious what your thoughts are around that, and how we could shift that mindset from weakness. Or, I know that there's, being kind to ourselves and healing and things like that, but shifting it from a weakness to, I see it as almost like a leadership sort of mentality, right? How does somebody start to crack that armor? Because I think that can be a really hard thing for somebody. I picture people that I know, right? Like, no, I'm not doing that
Right.
shit.
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And you're pointing at something interesting too, because in my tradition, courage and power are synonymous with compassion and empathy, because these are really, really, really powerful things, whether we're compassion to ourselves or others in the world. And I work with certain men who are very successful. And just if you looked at them from the outside, you would think, well, they have everything. They have gotten, really good in their field and they're financially set. And yet inside, they're still not feeling right. And part of this is um, a sense of shame, a sense of not being good enough that comes up when considering slowing down a little bit, when considering, being nice to themselves, in a sense that maybe they'll lose something. Like, oh, well, if I'm nice to myself, well, then I'll never get anything done. I'll be weak. I'll just sit around and, watch porn and eat chocolate. And again, from a Buddhist view, the purpose of doing this is to develop your wisdom, your clarity. You can do that through these compassionate practices. You can do this through mindfulness. Why do you want to be wise? Well, so you can make good decisions for yourself and other people too. And if you are a successful man and if you are in a leadership role, well, that means that many people are counting on you to do the right thing. And I don't mean that in a moral way. I mean to make good decisions on behalf of yourself and these other people. If you're a family person, well, then you want to make good decisions for your family. And so these practices are not just like, oh, I want to be nice to myself. It's, oh, I want to use my courage to recognize that what I say and do matters. And I can have more freedom and choice in what I say and do if I approach myself a little more softly and understand what's operating under here.
It almost sounds like, and as I think about it afterwards, I try to pick the right words, but it almost sounds like it's more about the real vulnerability is in not taking the opportunity to explore this, right? Because that's where, when we do need to show up for ourselves or our families or whatever it might be, that there might be this part of us that hasn't been explored, that's maybe holding us back or whatever it is. So the real vulnerability it sounds like, is not in taking the time to pause or to explore it or to become weak, but it's more of that if we don't take that opportunity, then we're, I almost see it like being vulnerable to a virus or a cold or something like that, right? That if we don't, I don't want to associate it with immunity or taking, getting your COVID shot or anything. But, if we don't take the time to work out or whatever it might be, then of course we're going to be, there's potential that's going to be there for us to have health concerns later on down the road, right? Vulnerabilities when I needed to, I keep thinking about like when I needed to like chase down the burglar or whatever it was, that
Yes.
there was something there that was holding me back.
Yeah, beautifully said. Yes, it helps us develop our capacity to hold our own feelings, to hold others' feelings, and in doing so, what you're doing is paying attention. So you are learning to pay attention to what's happening inside and outside. That gives you an edge. That means in any moment you are aware. And maybe you will have to chase down a burglar, or maybe you will have to notice that your daughter is a little upset today. What's going on there? Whatever it is, or your employees, or you have to make a big decision and you have to deal with your own fears in order to make that decision. All of those are valuable in real, a tangible way, you know. My Tibetan teacher years ago, he also had a lot of Chinese businessmen who would come and learn from him. And he said to us, they don't care about meditation. They care that this practice will give them an edge in business. Because when they're sitting there talking to, in a business meeting, they know more about what's happening in this moment, both at the table and in themselves, so they can, really be skillful in their words and their decisions. So it's this softening is useful as in practical ways as well.
It's a really great story of understanding this that you mentioned about the businessmen that come to learn it, not to sit at home and ponder the meaning of life necessarily, but to be better in business, to understand both themselves and the people around them. When I think about it, there's a real There's a real power being able to, I don't want to say stop, but to acknowledge the thoughts that are running through my mind in any of those moments, and to be with that. I tell you what, like the most uncomfortable feeling is to start, or can be, to start to explore that, to sit with it. But also, I think about those businessmen at the table. It's also incredibly profound to be able to, there's a sense of like wisdom and almost like elderhood, right? Or of like growth, of when you can both have those, you can acknowledge those and have those going on and be sitting at the table, but yet powerful, I guess, enough to not let them bubble to the surface like they may have before, right? And I see that in so many ways, right? It's not us jumping out to grab the alcohol or the cannabis or the porn or whatever it is, that we can sit with those heavy emotions and explore them. And it's like staying calm under pressure.
Yeah, it really is. And before I came to these practices, I often describe myself as a leaf in the wind. And what I mean by that is when I got what I wanted, I was happy. When I didn't get what I wanted, I was unhappy. And it was just a constant sort of cycle. And there's no freedom in that. There is no freedom at all in that. And so when you have a less reactive life, you have a lot more choice. So like, you described it as maturity, as elderhood, as wisdom. And that's what it is. You say, "Oh, okay, I can see all these choices I have right now. I don't have to be the leaf in the wind. I can speak in this tone and ask for that, and or say nothing right now because I know what's going to be the wisest thing."
Yeah. So much good stuff here. So I want to shift gears a little bit, right? We've talked a bit about the mindfulness, the meditation, and the inner critic, which I love these topics. I could talk for hours on it. But I also want to look at this from a perspective and how this shows up in our relationships as well. Our relationships with other people and creating happy relationships, right? What do you feel like is one thing with men that's misunderstood about connection or partnerships?
Yeah. I mean, I think, and I was taught this in very implicitly, not explicitly, that men didn't have needs, and that they really, their feelings really don't matter. And what I mean by that is it's not, their feelings aren't as important to them as they are to women. Um, as I've gotten older, of course, that's not true. Men may not express them or feel free enough in our culture to express how they're feeling, but they're having feelings. And to be able in relationships, my relationships with men, with my husband, with my family members, and with my students, to create enough space that I allow them to bring their feelings in. Because I think it's not, we can't, in a culture, you can't blame men or blame women. We're all in this system. So both men, I believe, would benefit from getting in touch with their feelings, and the people who love them would benefit from encouraging that and creating space around that. Even if, it's just simply sometimes stop talking, sometimes saying, well, what do you, what are your understanding of this? How does this make you feel? Or however it goes. But I do think that those, sometimes we sometimes people really have a skewed sense, I think, of men, and there's also this sense that if they show certain feelings, this is among men and women, I think it's throughout the culture, that they're weak. So it's sort of like, oh, we'd like you to share your feelings, but oh wait, I think you're being a baby.
Yeah. It's
So
almost like when it's appropriate, right?
Yeah.
Like
When
you're
exactly.
only allowed to do that when it's appropriate, but over
Yeah.
here, I need you to shove that
Yeah.
down.
Yeah. Beautifully said. And appropriate is usually, well, when it's comfortable for me. And so I think in that way, we're all co-creating a system where nobody's really getting their needs filled.
Yeah, that's it's an interesting thought, and I kind of wonder about how that dynamic plays out well in a relationship, because I do agree that people, men, both people, everybody needs to be able to share what they're experiencing, right? And what it is that's going on for them. But there is an expectation, I think, as much as we don't want there to be, that there is an expectation that that there is a sense of, and even as I think about this, that there is, I think, an expectation or a sense of like stoicism, right? And maybe that gets interpreted as emotionless or a leader. But
Mm.
as I'm thinking back to what you were just saying about what exploring that looks like, that it doesn't have to mean like checking or falling back into this emotionless hole,
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
it is an oscillation, I guess, between the two.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautifully said. And I do think that happens to people, especially men, a sense of like an opening and then a feeling of maybe rejection or someone's disappointed in them, and then a big closing, like you called it, this black hole. And that's a place of deep loneliness. And I hear that a lot from all people, but especially men. I'm all alone with these feelings, with this situation. You know, and so how can we all in our relationships, respond to each other with a little bit more openness and encouragement?
How does a partner or somebody break back into that, right? If they have, we've shut that down a little bit, maybe in that opportunity, like how does a partner open up that arena, that container again?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in my experience, with relationships, there's an idea that if we don't have a conflict and we're not fighting, everything's okay. And if we do have conflict, well, there's a problem, you know? And the truth is, healthy relationships between men and women or within a family have ruptures. And the healthiest know how to repair the rupture. And so there was a psychoanalyst named Heinz Kohut in the 20th century, and he said all of our communication and our relationships is typified by rupture and repair. And those of us that have loving relationships know how to repair. And so it's constant, I guess is my point. It's not like, oh, you and we're going to have a blow up and then we'll resolve it and it's never going to happen again. It's going to be, we're going to miscommunicate. We're going to misunderstand each other. I might hurt your feelings. You might hurt mine. And we're going to stop and repair that rupture. How are we going to do it? Well, first, each of us are going to take care of our own feelings, because I can't say this enough, Corey, but taking care of your feelings is taking care of your family's feelings in a certain way. Like you're not putting it on someone else. So first in this rupture is acknowledging your own, whatever's going on in you, right? A sense of rejection, a sense of embarrassment. And then the second part is, okay, I'm in a place now where I can speak with my partner or my family member, and I can share what's going on with me. and I can be open to what's going on with them. And just because my feelings got hurt, it doesn't mean someone did something wrong. Okay? And I can say, oh, my husband's feelings got hurt. I can see why they got hurt. It doesn't mean I did anything wrong at all. Maybe I was, just not paying attention. But I can hold that without being defensive, saying, oh, no, no, you're wrong. That's not how it went. Why are you acting like this? It's, oh, you're feeling like this. Okay, I get it. Let's talk about it. And we can do this, with one another. And in relationships, it's just like everything else, it's going to take practice. Sometimes you're going to fail. Sometimes I'm like, what are you talking about? That's crazy, right? And I have to sit down and take a breath, and start again, rupture and repair. But it's a very worthwhile practice of anything I think that we're all going to do in our lives. This will be of the most benefit to you. You can really feel it when that connection is made with people you love.
It sounds like there's really a thread throughout all of this as we talk about mindfulness and kindness with ourselves and taking pause of being able, as I heard you say, stopping and acknowledging your own reaction or emotions in the moment before trying to proceed. I mean, I can see for myself in the past and others the times where we want to go right into fixing it. And
Yes.
then I can see how it would probably lead to reacting from a place that it's like, reacting as a different person almost, because we haven't really stopped and explored or navigated like, well, how do I feel about it?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I show up in a way that is defensive, right? Or whatever it is. But so it's interesting how much of this all really plays together, of taking the time to sit with yourself and your thoughts and explore that a little bit, maybe a little calmness, taking a break between the two of you, and then coming back to repair that rupture from a place of I guess, if anything, a little bit more information or a little bit more knowledge than anything else. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think it's possible to begin to learn when you soften to yourself, Kim, it's okay. Kim, you said that came out of the blue. It was really mean. I wish I hadn't done that. Okay, Kim, I'm going to be kind to myself about that. You can start to do that for other people too, and be able to take in, their mistakes, their errors. And instead of, so many people come to me, they want other people to change their kids, their spouse, their boss. Other people are not going to change. You can just choose to love them. You can choose to leave them. You can use your wisdom to decide how to do that. But that part isn't up to you, But what you can do is change how you relate to yourself, and in doing so to them, and maybe allow space for them. And again, I'm not talking about abusive people, or those are a whole different thing, but our regular life together.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Well, hey, as we start to wrap up here, Kim, if you could speak directly to the men that are listening who feel exhausted or ashamed, right, or are disconnected but don't know where to start, what would you want them to hear from you?
Well, first of all, I want all of you, anybody listening that feels this way, to know that there's nothing wrong with you. That I don't believe really in like self-help in the sense of you're like a project that needs to be fixed. I don't believe that. I believe everyone has struggles and suffering. Everyone who's listening, you have struggles and suffering. And it is possible for you to um, bring some softness to that, to bring some understanding to that, to get to know yourself in a much deeper way so that you do suffer less, so that you do feel more at ease with yourself. And in that way, at ease with other people too. And that includes things like your shame, your fears, your insecurities. That's normal. It's okay for you to have that. How can you use your wisdom to be with that? And I just want everyone to know that you can do that. It's possible.
I love how so much of this and what I continue hearing from you is that it's, by leading yourself, you're opening up that space to show up better for others, right? To have more understanding, to have more empathy, to have more grace, right? And gratitude for everybody around us. So sounds like it's really a win-win, right? In helping yourself and in others. So where can the guys that are listening go to learn more about you and to read your books?
You can reach me at my website, meditationwithheart.com, meditationwithheart.com. I've written several books. The most recent is called Happy Relationships. I have a book about grief and loss, navigating grief and loss, and you can find those books at any bookseller. And the information is on my website. And if you're interested, I have a weekly newsletter through Substack. It's free. I share teachings and recorded meditations. And so sign up. You might find it useful.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks, Kim, for all of your information and being here today. I know for myself that being more thoughtful and more practical, practicing these things more often has been life-changing. So I think between all of that, I hope and I think everybody will get a lot out of today's episode. So thanks for being here.
You're welcome, Corey. Thank you.
Hey, before you go, this podcast is just the surface. The real work happens inside the Evolved Men Brotherhood. This is our private community of men committed to leading themselves boldly, building confidence, and sharpening one another in the fire. Registration officially opens December 1st, and we kick off our brotherhood calls together beginning in January 2026. But you can get on the list today and be the first to claim your spot. If you're tired of going at life alone and you're ready for true accountability, support, and connection with men who get it, head to evolvedmenproject.com/brotherhood. Don't just listen, step into the brotherhood. I'll see you inside.